It's Wednesday, January the 4th. I hope everybody had a great Christmas and New Year's. Haven't done a fishing report in a few weeks. It was so dang cold over Christmas, I didn't have any desire to go out between the cold temperatures and the wind. Excuse me, I got a little bit of a cold here as well. But, I was catching them really good right before it got real cold. I was catching them deep really good. They were grouped up in the center of the creeks. And, quite a bit has changed. I got to go out 3 days this weekend. But water temperature right now in the mid-lake, I fish Kimbling City, Baxter area, and it's mid 40s, 45 to 47 degrees, depends where you're at. Now, the upper rivers are a lot colder because during that cold front, almost all the river arms, like the bridge at Flat Creek, James River, Kings River, everything was froze, not solid, but froze all the way across. So I'm sure most of that ice is gone now, and I'm sure that water up there is a lot colder. And the water's been extremely clear. Now, we had several inches of rain the other day, so we might have got a little bit of stain from it. And the lake is actually coming up a little bit. It's come up about, 6 inches in the last 2 days from the recent rain that we've had. But, when I went out the other day, I know some of the guys are still finding them out there, grouped up really deep. I've really been struggling finding big groups of fish. I can find a lot of shad, and a lot of the shad seem to be extremely deep. Some 60 to 90 feet deep, but I'm having trouble finding fish around them. And you can kind of tell on the nice days where the fish were, because when you go into a creek like, Fisher Creek or Schooner or White's Branch, the areas that they were in, you'll see 4 or 5 boats all in there looking around. A lot of us are looking for the loons and the gulls. The loons are still a big key as far as for finding the deep schools of bait. But like I said, I've been having trouble catching numbers of fish around the shad. I can catch them out in them areas singles, fishing isolated trees. Some of them are suspended. But I'll get into the deep bite first. And one thing I want to mention too, I was over at Extreme Outdoors the other day, and they're having their annual fishing swap meet this February. It is, I think, the 22nd, 23rd. But if you're interested in getting a booth to sell product, they've got just about all their booths sold, and they've really been great events as far as for buying or selling tackle. So need to put that on your calendar, Extreme Outdoors, the annual swap meet. But as far as the deep bite, my most consistent bait has been a big bite. And I've talked about this same bait for quite a while. It's a little jerk minnow on a pro swimmer head. And I'm not just talking about this bait all the time because I'm sponsored by Big Bite. If there was another bait that I thought I could be catching more fish on, by God, I'd be throwing it. But I've just got a lot of confidence in it. And even when I do catch them on this, I'll try other baits to see if they'll work better. But this has been kind of my go-to bait. And a lot of these fish I'm picking off on my live scope. I'm seeing them in the tops of the trees or beside the timber. And they'll be at different depths. I've caught, the other day when I went out, each day I've had about 14 to 15 pounds. Some have been deep, some have been shallow. But I've had, at least one, 3 to 5 pound fish each day on this little Demiki reed bait, on the little jerk minnow. And like I say, some of them are coming off isolated trees. Some of them are down there in 50, 60 foot. Some of them are up there about, 20 foot. I'm just having to do a lot of searching on the trolling motor. And mainly a lot of these fish for me are coming out of the centers of the creeks. I've tried quite a few main lake gravel points, But the only place I can find any birds or gulls seem to be in the centers of the deep creeks, and it's worked for me some up around Baxter, Ants Creek, Kimberling City area. Another deal that, I don't have anything solid that's working where I can go out. I feel I can go out and stay with one bait all day and catch fish. What I'll do is I'll go into a creek and I'll check out the deep fish, look for the birds and the loons and the gulls. If that's not happening, I'll move in a little closer to the bank where there's some isolated cedar trees or hardwoods, and I'll pick up a jerkbait or Alabama rig. And like I said, each trip I've been out, it's kind of been a mixed deal. I'm catching some deep, some on a jerkbait, some on an A-rig. But the jerkbaits I'm mainly throwing a mixed stick. I do throw a mega bass some as well, but a lot of the main reason I throw the mixed sticks is my favorite jerkbait for years used to be a Smithwick Rogue. And then years ago, Spro came out with the mixed stick, which I feel is a lot better bait. Comes out with good hooks. You don't have to do anything to it right out of the package. Maybe you got to put a little weight on the hooks to get it to suspend right. And it's a lot more efficient as far as casting. So that's why the mixed stick is my mainstay bait. Plus it'll get a little deeper than the mega bass. And now with live scope and forward facing sonar, you can tell exactly how deep every bait you throw is getting. But normally I like my jerk baits to sink just a little bit while I'm letting them sit. And I'll usually have a couple different colors tied on. I like one that's a solid color, like a blue bandit is real hard to beat. If I've got a lot of sunlight, Norman Flake Ghost or Clear Chartreuse is a really good bait when the sun's real high. And if you get some stained water like we may have right now, I haven't been out since the rain, but if I get in some off-colored water, and we'll throw these up at Lake of the Ozarks a lot, it's a little, I forget the name of it, but it's got a little chartreuse on the back, and Namioki shad is a real good one. So I try to keep, two jerk baits, tied on, and I'm not getting a lot of bites on the jerk bait, but most of the bites I'm getting on are the keepers, and they're not all coming off of cedar trees. Some are coming off of hardwoods, and a lot of them are coming off rock transitions, and a lot of these same creeks that I'm looking out there deep. Like I say, I'm just kind of bouncing from creek to creek, trying different things, and doing more searching than anything, keeping an eye on the electronics, trying to find bait. And in a couple areas, let's see, day before yesterday, I think it was Monday, or Sunday, I was out and caught several on an Alabama rig, and I'm throwing the A-rig, kind of in a lot of the same places I'm throwing a jerkbait. If I see some fish out there in 30, 40 feet, I'll actually drop the A-rig down to that depth. But I'm just kind of mixing it up with different swim baits, pro swimmers, Kitex will work, Rage Swimmer by Strike King. But there again, I've got a lot of confidence in the big bite product and the pro swimmer, so that's mainly what I've got tied on. And this particular one, I've got 1/8 ounce heads so that I could fish it slower and a little bit shallower. The other day I was out up in between Baxter and Campbell Point. I started catching some fish on the A-rig, and I caught several off one particular bank. It was a rock transition. I was sitting in about 30 to 35 feet where I could cast up to the bank. It was like on a channel swing where it went from chunk rock to gravel, but I was on the deeper part of it before it got to the gravel. And the fish seemed to be right on the bottom, right on the base of the trees and the stumps, anywhere from 12 to 18 feet deep. The problem with the A-rig was fishing it down around the base of the trees and the stumps, I was getting it hung up quite a bit. But every once in a while, I could see the fish come up off of the stumps and either follow the A-rig, and every once in a while they would bite it. So I picked up a 5-fish lures ultimate finesse jig, but a pretty heavy one, a 9/16 PBJ. Now, I could get this through the timber without getting stuck with the A-rig, and I started catching some fish on the jig. And I searched around, found a couple more banks that was like that, and caught a couple fish off of each one. Most all the fish I caught doing this were largemouth. And the majority of the fish that I've been catching on the A-rig and jerkbait and the jig have been largemouths. When I do find them out there real deep, I'll catch an occasional good-sized largemouth on the little Demiki rig, but if I catch any kind of nimbers, I haven't, like I said, I hadn't been catching the big nimbers, but if I catch 3 or 4 fish out there deep, they're usually spots. The fish that I've been catching on the jerkbait and the A-rig, some of those have been mixed smallmouth, the ones that have been higher up in the water column. So that's another thing to keep in mind too, is try to fish some banks that you, in the springtime, that you normally catch smallmouths on. Just kind of back out a little bit and find where the nearest deep water is and rock transitions. That's a good place to try the jerkbait and the A-rig. Like I say, all the fish, they're not on timber. They're on rock changers, they're out there roaming around. But I think for the most part, it's been a pretty tough bite for me to get anything going consistent. Looks like the weather's going to be pretty good for the next few days, but it's going to be pretty much, standard winter fishing unless you come up on a big group of them that actively feeding on them shad. I think it's going to be a grind. So till next week, good luck, good fishing.